All right, today I'm super excited. I have Doug Edrington out of Chattanooga, Tennessee. We're going to talk about how to leverage your business in a way that can help you take it to the next level. Listen, if you're wondering if there's somebody that can help you do this, Doug's your guy. Listen, I know I've known him for a long time, and now we're talking about CEO for Berkshire Hathaway Home Services, J. Douglas Properties. We're talking about also the team leader for the Edrington team, over 500 transactions there, and also a coach for the Tom Ferry organization where he's spreading that wisdom on a weekly basis. You're not going to miss this episode. All right, Doug, I really appreciate you, man. I've said this to you before, but I always feel like I get smarter every single time we talk. And so the 15, 20 minutes we're leading up to this, again, I feel like I've got all these notes here, but I'm excited really for everybody else to hear a little bit about this. And just want to say thanks for coming down and spending some time with our agents and really just spreading some knowledge that you gained over the years. And we really started talking about this leverage and the value of leverage for real estate agents and teams a while ago. And as you were speaking about that, I was like, man, I'd just love to dive a little deeper on some of this and maybe share this in a way that other agents across the country can hopefully get some value out of it as well. So Doug, appreciate you being here. If you don't mind, just kind of give a little background on what you were thinking when you started talking about leverage.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's great to be on here and thanks for having me. And, you say I make you feel smarter. You make me feel better because I don't get those compliments every day, but, no, I appreciate it. The concept of leverage, I've, in my almost 18 years now, I get to reflect back and as we all do, no matter if it's a year or 40 years in the business, and you get to sit there and think like, man, had I only accomplished these things I'm doing today, X number of years ago, or in the first year of my business, right? And the reality is what we want to do is we want to continue growing. We want to continue getting better, right? And if you're thinking that way, and you're doing it because it's a habit, you constantly get better over and over again. That means like you're mastering that art of growth, learning, leverage. But if you're listening to this and you're like, I haven't thought that way before, I've dreamed about it and I've like thought if I could be like that person, that just means you're probably lacking exposure. You're lacking exposure. And my parents and I got in this business in 2004 and we went for quite a few years, like just being, like the run of the mill. We were average agents. We sold a handful of houses and it really came down for me one night. And I mean, I'm not that old, but it makes me feel kind of old. My wife and I were laying in bed one night and we were talking about me working all the time, never being around. And then, unfortunately, like some of us do, sometimes you pull out your phone and you're staring at your phone in bed and she hands the phone over to me and it's a YouTube video of this like guy that most of us know. And he's like talking about how he runs his business and his team. And it was the first YouTube video I think I ever saw. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Is there more of this out there? And like just YouTube opened up my eyes to see like, oh, wow, that's how that team leader did that. I could do that. I just never thought that before. And right. So, when it comes to leverage, I kind of started with when I was talking with your company a couple of weeks ago was, has there ever been a time where you ever said, I don't have enough time for that, or has there ever been a time where you're like, I could do that, but, follows with, those type things. It takes a new habit to be built to learn. Right. So instead of having the habits of, I wish I had, I should have, I could have, like get in the habit of just learning. Right. So like one of the first key points I talked about with your company, with the conversation of leverage is leverage the education out there. Yeah. We're very, very fortunate. And if you think about, the people that I look up to that are much older than me, that have wound down their career or they're retired from it, they just didn't have that like we had it. I mean, now you can literally sit on Instagram and scroll through your stories and be like, man, I'm using that tomorrow. Like, I like that quote, or I've never thought that way before. And so you got to kind of turn your brain on, you have to turn your brain on to say, I'm a sponge. I'm going to constantly learn. And so, from an educational standpoint, don't try to think you've got to go to the biggest, baddest person in the world to get the most information from. Sometimes it's just the most simplest stuff in the world, right? We talked a little bit about personality types last time we were together, and how to communicate with different people. And one of the most fun examples that relates to every single person listening to this video, whether it be with a client or if it's just with their own family, right? And that is recognizing the different personality types. So we talked about drivers, expressives, amiables, and analyticals, right? I always have to be a little slower on that one because that's not me. And but you think of those 4 different personality types, and they all have different tendencies. Drivers are really results based. Analyticals are very task oriented or detail oriented, I should say. Amiables put others first, generally speaking, over themselves, and expressives. I don't know how to explain expressives other than just expressive. There's happy people. They get excited. They get caught up in whatever's going on, the energy. And if you think of those 4 personality types, and you break it down to reflecting in the mirror and deciding, what am I? What kind of personality type am I? I think that's first really important to recognize. And you probably want to pin yourself with 1 or 2 of those right out the gate. Everyone has generally a primary and a secondary if you're going to label yourself in this conversation. And it's kind of tied in with the DISC assessment and all that kind of stuff that we talk about from time to time. But if you really just like watch a video or 2 on personality types, read a book or a blog about it, or listen to a podcast or something, you're going to figure out pretty quickly and get clear on what you are. I am very clear that I'm a driver expressive. And driver expressives, they like to move quickly, results based and have fun along the way. And, we've got that short attention span, generally speaking. Jimmy, you probably are too. You're probably driver expressive if I had to peg it, right? And we got short attention spans. We don't get caught up in the details. We tend to start a lot of things, not finish a lot of things, so you got to be focused. But that's me, right? The best example that I like to remind people to think about that we all do, it's just a text message conversation. And there was a text message conversation that I was in a group thread on. It was a past client of mine. I had him work with one of our agents on our team in Chattanooga. And this past client shot me and this other agent a text because I'd already introduced them. They did a deal with them. And then a couple of years have passed and they're basically reaching out. And the text message was like a paragraph long, completely full of emojis, right? Big, expressive words were all caps. There was lots of exclamation marks. But the text message went along the lines of like, hey guys, how are you guys doing? Hope you've been well. My kids are doing great. Dog's still alive. And here I am as the driver expressive pushing through it. But like this person was extremely expressive, probably expressive amiable, which is all about relationships. And that's the tactic to work with that type of personality type, but just went on and on and on and said things like, I'd like to see this house, but I want to know what you're thinking. We could do it on the weekend because I don't want to, no, I'm sorry, I got it backwards. Is there a time next week that we could do it and I can take some time off of work? I don't want to take up your weekends or evenings, which like no client ever does, right? They're just like pouring into us saying basically, I want your opinion. I want your advice. I don't want to waste your time. Oh, also my mom lives down the road. Can mom come too? And as I'm reading this text message, I'm going to respond because I'm in the message, right? And I started typing out, I'm like, hey, Susie, how you been? Thanks for asking about, my family and our time. And as I'm typing this message out, my other agent that I introduced them to that has been with us for a couple of years now, gotten really confident in what they're doing, and they're busy, right? Super busy right now. He responds back, that house will be gone by then. House 2:00 today. And I was like, and I saw that text message and I was like, wow, my agent ignored everything that person just said because super driver, right? Super driver, and went straight for the kill. And in his mind, that's what he would want. I'd want availability now. I want the service now. I want to know that they're going to drop and run. But when that consumer responded back, it was just, let me check. And that was it. And it was kind of like, ooh, the customer mirrored the agent versus us mirroring the customer.
Right.
And so if you're thinking right now, like you could probably, anybody's listening to this video could probably pull up their text message thread and scroll through where they've talked to a customer recently and said, oh, wow, I wasn't thinking about their personality type. I wasn't mirroring them to make them feel comfortable. Because people will lean into people that they feel comfortable around. They'll get guarded or scared of the people that they're not comfortable around. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it's absolutely. And the beauty of this, Doug, just to kind of give you a little background, since that time a couple of weeks ago when you did this, literally I've caught myself, I've caught myself where, hey, and I'm going to brag myself. I'm actually using emoji other than the thumbs up. You know what I mean? That's just there. So I can just push the button. But so yeah, and actually just realized I was doing this. And basically what I was doing, like you said, is I was trying to get them to mirror me instead of me mirroring them. And that's just a recipe for, killing relationships and killing future transactions and just killing opportunities. So this is a perfect example. I've had other agents, just so you know, a little feedback there also, that have come up to me and said the same thing, that they realize that they are expressive people and they send emojis and do this whole, oh, it's great. And they start going into this whole thing. And all the person wants that's asking is, what time can I see the house? I don't need all that, Yeah. And so it's all of those just mirroring.
It's the other way around too, because we all have the customers that will literally just send us like a link to a house. And as an agent, we know, okay, they want to see it. Right. And if you're on the opposite spectrum of them and you're super expressive or super analytical and you start giving them a bunch of, nonsense in their eyes about the house and the days on market and what you know about and all this stuff, like really all they're looking for is a thumbs up. They're just like, yeah, thumbs up. You want to do it now or would later be better? And so you got to talk their language. So when we're talking about leverage, this is just a great way to think about like education.
Let me mention one other thing, because I want to make sure that I hit this, because you and I have talked about this before also, is, in reality, the biggest issue, and if you see all of the National Association of Realtors studies, when they ask the questions about what is the biggest disappointment for realtors or for agents, it is the lack of communication. And a lot of times I think it's missed out. It may not be that it's a lack of communication. It's that I'm communicating the way that makes sense to me, but it doesn't make sense to them. So this is
it's a lack of connection.
That's
a lack of connection. And I literally this morning watched a really good video, and anybody who's in leadership in real estate or leadership in general in today's time, it feels like the word empathy is getting thrown around a lot. And I just watched this little 2.5 minute video. It was a cartoon. It was really well put together by Brene Brown. And it was like the difference between empathy and sympathy. And it was just really interesting how empathy creates connection, where sympathy really does the opposite of that. And she used a really good example in this. She said, and I challenge, this is another tool that we should all be using. It was, oh my gosh, don't blank, Doug. It was, if you ever say, at least, this was the term at least. If you ever use the term at least in your conversation with anybody, you are now in the sympathy world on the outside, feeling for them, not in the empathy side where you're getting down on their level and saying, really working through the problem with them. So if you think of the term at least, has there ever been a time where you had a client and the house and the appraisal, came in short, and it was to your buyer's advantage, and the buyer's like a huge win, and then something goes wrong towards the end and they're stressing out? It could literally be just the closing date. Like, something changed last minute, underwriting got pushed out. And then the agent says, well, at least you got $25,000 off of what you planned on paying. Brene was like, talking about a bunch of other stuff. It was like, oh, I'm so sorry you had a miscarriage. At least, you can get pregnant, or you know what I mean? Like I could go on and on with all different examples. Right. But like I've never heard that until this morning. I was like, I need to make sure that I never use the term at least, because that doesn't create connection.
No. Yeah. And Doug, this brings back, because I've said this before, communication leads to connection. And ultimately, connection is what leads to conversion in the sales process. And so if you don't get it started correctly, and that was the value and what I got so much out of when we were talking about this, and when you share this with the agents, is that it all starts with that communication and the way that you're doing those things. And foundationally, If you don't get that one right, you can have all this other stuff going on. You're just going to constantly be on this, where you're never generating multiple transactions or future business or referrals or repeat business. And the communication is really the key that leads to all of that. So from that standpoint, let's shift a little bit on this leverage side to some of this as far as everybody's leveraging, whether they're a brand new single agent or they're a team, they have a group of people because, if we're going to be all that we want our business to be, we're probably going to need other people to do that. Do you want to talk a little bit about that as well?
Yeah. So this part of the conversation came from a good friend of mine, Josh Rubin in New York. He texted me one day. He's like, "Hey, Doug, read this book." And it was called Who Not How. And I got to be honest with you. It's just case study after case study after story of all these, people that have found the right who in their life versus focusing on the how. I mean, literally the cover of the book, it's bright orange and it says who, not how. I didn't read it for probably 3 months, but it sat on my table here in my office, and just the book physically being there made me think differently. And I hadn't even opened the book yet because I was like, wait a minute. That book has something to say with don't focus on what needs to be done, focus on who you need to have in your life, right? And so team or no team, if you're a solo agent, you have a team. You've got your mortgage lender, you got your insurance agent, you got your title person, your escrow person, depending on the state you're in, like you've got your broker, you probably got your buddy, you got your buddy that helps you show a house here or there. And so like, you got to recognize you've got a team, but back to the point of this call is, leverage. Are you properly leveraging them, right? And I don't mean using them. It's kind of a pet peeve I've got of mine right now. I hear a lot of people, even one of my agents this morning said, they were talking about, they were personally buying a house. And I said, who are you doing for lending? And they said, oh, I'm using this person. And I was like, using them? Is that really a term we want to tell people? Like you're partnering with them. You hired them. They're your advocate. We even say that as agents a lot of times to our clients, like, well, they're using me to buy this, so they're using me to sell the house. Is that really the affirmation you want to drive into your client's head, that you're being used? That's why we end up so often saying, oh gosh, they bought a house through someone else, and then you just want to lean on your buyer's rep to figure out how to get paid. Well, you train them to use you, right? And so kind of bring it back. A little pet peeve, like I said, but try to bring it back though. When you think about the who, not how side of things, do you have a plan with these people? And don't take this too literally when I say like people above you or people beneath you. It's not that they're beneath you. It's just like the pecking order, right? You're either bringing someone in your life to instruct to do something to help you out, or on the flip side, you might be the person that needs the instruction. There's some really successful agents in your industry or in our industry, but your market, my market, all the markets, that they're all under leveraged. And there's a bunch of brand new agents out there that would love to spend the day with them. Right. Mm-hmm. And so imagine if you're newer and you just went to some of the people that you admire and respect and said, hey, I see your office light on at 11 o'clock at night when I drive by the office. I see your office light on at 6 a.m. in the morning in your office, and I'm pretty sure you're just not leaving the lights on. You're working really hard. Can I be there for you in any way possible? And I mean, can I open a door? Can I shadow on an appointment with you? Can I do your paperwork for you? Because you could become their who, and you get to leverage each other in a really positive way to free them up from some task, but also you're just begging to have that exposure, right? So it doesn't matter if you're above or beneath, or it doesn't matter. It's surrounding yourself with the right people. And then more importantly, having a plan. I had a call with the gal from Knoxville, Tennessee yesterday. Mutual friend hits me up and says, hey, would you mind having a call with her? She's 3 months in the business, only sold 3 houses, and she's really struggling. And I'm like, that doesn't sound like struggling to me, right? Solo agent. And so I hop on a Zoom call with her. This is 2 days ago, I think. Hop on a Zoom call with her, and I'm like, hey, so what's the goal? And she's like, well, I'd really like to sell 14 or 15 houses this year. And I'm like, first off, congratulations. You're not far from your goal. You're 3 months in, you've already sold 3 houses. Like, pat yourself on the back for a second. Mm-hmm. And the conversation I had with her though, she was just like, I got lucky though. And I'm like, this one was a family member. This was a referral. This was, a lead that was handed off because another agent didn't want it. And I'm like, girl, they trusted you. Like you're halfway there, right? Imagine what you could do with the right people surrounding you right now. And she was very anti-team at the beginning of the conversation. And at the end of the conversation, she was very much like focused on a team. And I told her, I was like, I'm not telling you to join a team, start a team, anything like that. And I was like, but teams in our industry have it really figured out right now. And solo agents are really good salespeople. And some of them have really figured out, and some of them, they're in their own way, right? Because they're not able to get to the next step. And I told her, I was like, you need to interview every single team in your town. Like every team, like maybe in the top 20 or something like that, right? A handful of teams, interview them all. And I'm not saying you're going to go work for them, but imagine if you had the education in an interview to understand what are their lead sources, what does their training look like, what's their culture like, what's the benefit of the team. And I was like, at a minimum, you decide you don't want to be on a team, and you got a killer listing presentation when you go up against them because you know what they do now. Right. And I'm like, those who's could even be short term. It could be literally just for a short little lesson, but they might actually surprise you, and you might want to be a part of what they have. You don't know until you try, right? So again, it kind of falls back on the education, but it's having the who's around you as well, your own team. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, one of the things, Doug, about this, I know as a coach for Tom Ferry's organization, and you've been coaching agents, you've been coaching your own team members, you've been coaching agents for a long time. What are some of these, and as we kind of wrap this up, what are some of those key first hires? Let's say there's an agent out there is kind of just, like you say, like hopefully a lot of people get to where they're in a place where they just are running wide open and they just don't know how they can get any more time. What are some of the first key hires that someone can make that'll be able to give them the opportunity to leverage what they've got going on?
So I'm gonna give you two answers to that. Okay. For the people out there that have their nest egg set up, they got 50 grand, 100 grand, whatever their, depends on the market and lifestyles and whatnot. But for those that have their nest egg set up, financially speaking, your first hire is an assistant. Mm-hmm. And it's a full-time personal assistant. It is someone who's willing to help you personally, help your family. They're willing to get you a cup of coffee, but they're also the person who can be an extension of you, and they're heavily in your business, and they're going to answer questions for you that person's been trained on, and they're going to solve problems. They really need to be a problem solver, right? And you got to make sure there's no red flags. No red flags are allowed when you hire this person. I've done it myself, and I've had some great people with me. And so like, you gotta really be focused on the long-term picture. But I think you got to do that. You got to get them a car, and you got to put them on your insurance, because if you're going to ask them to run all over town, you got to get them a car, right? And so just think of an expense. I mean, most of us are willing to pay $400 or $500 for a lead from Zillow or Realtor or whatever. Like, really, what's another $500 car payment? So if you got the money, the assistant all day long is your first hire. If you don't have the money, which is where most people are, right? If they're thinking, what's my first step? This is where, kind of back to the who, not how, it's really important that you figure out how to leverage in the right way. Maybe you're really good in front of people, but you don't have it in you to prospect like crazy. If you don't have the money to hire like a full-time ISA, inside sales agent or of some sort, maybe you don't like that term ISA. Maybe call them your business development, person, director or something like that. But it could be that it's just another agent in your office that is really good on the phone, but their schedule doesn't allow them to maybe work evenings and weekends and things of that nature. One of our team members had a baby not too long ago, and through COVID especially, she was like, I'm really nervous about putting my unborn child here and myself into some situations where we could potentially get sick and whatnot. She's like, but I still want to make more money next year than I made this year. What do I do? Mm-hmm. And so we basically sat down and made a plan around our team of who can she help, mm-hmm. but also offer out for a fee, right? A referral based or a flat rate fee per transaction. And she's doing amazing. Yeah. And it's not a full hire. The agent who's getting to leverage that doesn't have any fixed cost. right? And it's a huge win for them. So it could be someone to help you prospect. Maybe it's the other way around. One of my like most memorable first clients I ever had when I started coaching was this guy, and I don't want to give too much because it keep his information confidential, but like he just wasn't that great in front of people. Just didn't have the personality to hit it off. Most of his business was friends or family, and but he was really, really well scripted on the phone. Just when he got in front of people, he got nervous. It just, that personality type, it was just made him uncomfortable. So when I was, coaching him, we're trying to figure out what's the best path to help him hit his financial goal. I was like, you're really good at setting up appointments. What if we just focused on like for sale by owner appointments and scripted them out, and you just reached out to some of the top agents in your brokerage and said, hey, if I book this appointment, will you come with me and we'll split the deal? And he went from like the previous year selling like 6 houses to the year that I was with him selling 18 houses. Average price point like 800,000 or 900,000 too. So like he was making a living, And so if you don't have the cash, you don't have that nest egg saved up, you got to get a little scrappy, right? You got to figure out what you're going to do, but it just figure out, what do you not like doing, or what's your weakest point, and figure out, how can I get someone around me that I trust? Don't have to blind lead the blind. All right. Okay. So make sure they're good at their part and you be good at your part. And it's pretty magical when you put those two together.
Yeah. Doug, yeah, absolutely. And I'll say this too. I don't know a single top producing agent, a successful person in life that doesn't understand the value of leverage and being able to find those folks that they can help as well as they're going to help them. And a lot of times I think people are like, people don't want to come to work for me. They're helping me build my dream. A lot of times by them helping you, it's helping build their dream as well. And so I think sometimes we get that confused. But this has been so good from a standpoint that I know that, like I say, practically taking and understanding who it is you're communicating with and communicating in the way that they would like to be communicated in versus the way we always communicate to other people is such a key component. Finding those people that are going to help you build your business and that you can help build them, having the ability to go out and know that knowledge is available. These are things that fundamentally can literally change the trajectory of people's business. I know people got some value out of this. Doug, before they go, what's the best way, if they've got a referral to send up Chattanooga way, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
So, best way is, probably social media, right? So Facebook, Doug Edrington, just like it sounds, Edrington, Edrington. And or Instagram. That's probably the best 2 ways, or you can shoot me an email, give me a call. But I'm happy to help any way I can. Shoot me a message, and if I can help you along the way, it brings me joy. We're in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and we're 5 minutes from the Georgia state line, so all my agents are licensed in Georgia as well, so that North Georgia area above Atlanta. And but I want to leave you with this though. A really good presentation I got to sit through one time. Guy by the name of Tom Bilyeu. You might know who I'm talking about. And he had, in his presentation, he had shared a Harvard Business Review study, and they researched all these successful people, like from Michael Jordan to Oprah to Obama to whoever, right? Name all these really, really successful people. And they were trying to discover the common denominators of sustainable happiness. Right. And so he asked the crowd, he was just like, what do you think has sustainable happiness? And everybody's like, family, love, friends, all this other stuff, right? That you would think immediately. And he said, actually, the common denominator amongst all these people that consider themselves to have sustainable happiness was they were always learning something new and they were always giving. And so like leverage ties into that really well, right. And there's something to be said about what we do all this for. No matter how much money you can make, if you go home at night and you drink yourself to death and you just miserable, right? You're unhappy, right? So what we're really doing this for is be happy. So it doesn't matter if you're making 50,000 or $1 million a year, like get focused on what's going to create some long-term happiness for you. And you can't do it alone. So hopefully this helps you guys.
So good. Thank you for your friendship, Doug. Thank you for always bringing the wisdom. And guys, reach out, let Doug know how much you appreciate this, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks for watching the video. I specifically chose the video below for you because it builds on the one you just watched. I hope it's helpful, and I'll talk to you soon.